Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher, and I grew up watching both As the World Turns and Guiding Light. While I was home in quarantine, I realized I was missing my Oakdale and Springfield family and thought some of you at home would be feeling the same way too. We have a great show today. I'm really excited about our two guests. Our two guests have cast some of the most talented actors to hit the canvas in Oakdale and Springfield. Please welcome to the locker room Mary Clay Boland and Rob Decina. Hello, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
How are you both doing?
I'm going to defer to Mary Clay. Every question, I'm going to let Mary Clay go first.
Ladies first. Thank you, Rob. Such a gentleman. Doing okay. You know, strange times, but things are good. I consider myself pretty lucky, and I'm grateful that we're all healthy and doing okay and still employed and things like that. So things are good.
Totally agree. Same sentiment. Happy to be working. Happy to be here. Thank you, Alan. Nobody ever wants to talk about casting, so.
Yeah.
I know you said that to me. I think it's really interesting. I mean, especially, you know, the fans have been tuning into all these shows to see the actors, but if it wasn't for the two of you, they wouldn't have ever met these actors, you know.
Right.
These actors would not be entertaining them. I just had a question that I thought of just now. How did you two first meet?
Actually, Rob, you start that.
Yeah, I should. Well, so Mary Clay and I have had similar paths in a way. So when I got the Guiding Light job, I was the associate at Warner Brothers Television Studios casting in New York. And so I was leaving to go to Guiding Light, and they wanted me to help fill my position and recommend people. Am I getting this right? Right.
Yeah.
So, and
I was doing Sopranos.
And Mary Clay was doing that job at The Sopranos, and I think we had met previously. We meet previously at Warner Brothers. We were hiring an assistant at the time, I think. But I think we met earlier. I don't know, maybe. But Mary Clay and I knew each other. And then when I was at the Guiding Light, I basically put her up for the job, and she got that job. And then, of course, when As World Turns was wanted a new casting director, I would already be at Guiding Light. So they asked me, and I said, well, you should hire Mary Clay Boland, because if you like what I'm doing, she'll do it better than me, because she's doing it. We've had, you know, she's in the. I
just follow Rob. I follow him.
Exactly. Well, I did notice that when I was reading both of your bios, because you both worked on The West Wing and Third Watch, and so you definitely worked at the same places. I was going to ask.
Yeah, just not later. At the same time.
Right. How did you get interested in casting and get started, Mary Clay?
You know, I kind of took a path that I wasn't expecting to go into casting. I was a theater major, a double major, theater as well as communications, focusing on television production. And I had no idea, though, what I wanted to do. I just came from ballet, so I'd been a ballet major at Indiana University, and I sort of was like, this is my interest. So I switched out of dance and switched into that. And so I liked directing, and one of my favorite parts of directing was casting, which I didn't know was a job. Like, I just loved the auditioning process. So then I graduated from college and started working for an advertising agency and hated it and was like, this isn't the right fit. So I went through a book of internships and found all these casting internships. And I was like, wow. What? And everything in it was like something I was interested in. And I said, well, let me try this. So I applied to a couple. I got one at Circle Rep in New York, which was an amazing theater. And I'd done a lot of plays with those playwrights. And I was like, oh my God, if I could work with those playwrights and see those actors. And luckily I got Circle Rep. So I did a year at Circle Rep Theater as their casting intern, and they were going broke. And so their casting director quit because they couldn't pay them. So they hired me as their casting director. For free.
They got a bargain.
They were like, you can type and write, so you got the job.
You're in the budget.
but I learned a ton and got to meet every amazing New York actor was at Circle Rep. So they would come in for readings. So I got to sort of see what a strong actor was, and so that was great. So that's how I got into it. And then from there I went to Law and Order, and then just kept going.
Internships are the best way to do most things,
Yeah, especially casting.
Rob, and for you?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of a similar path. I was a communications major in undergrad but I didn't kind of feel like I had enough. So I actually went to grad school for theater for directing. So I was doing that. I went to Sarah Lawrence College, which is right outside the city. And in my last, there was a student a year above me who was doing a casting internship. So, I kind of was curious about it. And that my final year, I got that internship, and it was for a small independent film casting office. So I was doing that 1 day a week, as long as they would have me, and it was great. And there was a guy named Billy Hopkins and Suzanne Smith and some other people, Kerry Barden, they're still working, and they were theater directors. Billy Hopkins was a theater director. Risa Brayman Garcia was his old partner. I freelanced with her after that. They were theater directors, and they pulled me inside and they said, "So you're studying, you're directing?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, this is a way to, maybe make a living and use that skill set that you're learning and that you have, and the ability to work with actors." And I was like, "Sounds good to me." So I kind of just, after that, I kind of had a dual life. I was sort of directing where I could in New York and teaching acting where I could, and was an assistant director at some of the bigger theater companies like Manhattan Theater Club. So I was sort of piecing it together, and at the same time, I was doing internships, or I'd get called for 3 weeks here or 2 weeks there, to run camera or, do things like that. And it just, one thing led to another, but it certainly started from that internship. And they were great. I remember it's sort of like you, "Oh, you're hired." That literally my second day at the internship, I showed up and they were like, "Great, go to this address. Here's headshot." Like, I was like, "What? There's a session for this movie." And I was like, "Okay, what? Like, what am I doing?" They were like, I was like, "Who's running the session?" And they were like, "You are." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they were like, "Don't worry about it. It's just meetings." So I got to this loft in Tribeca with all these indie film people and faked my way through it. And I realized I didn't even take it seriously that I was running the session, but they met this actor, and that it was this big table, and they all turned to me to get my opinion. And I started talking, and by the end of it, they were like, "That was great. Thank you so much for your help." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I can do this."
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was totally shot out of a can.
If there's one thing to take away from this, it truly is internships, because it really opened every door for me too. It really is an amazing opportunity for young folks to learn and
Oh, I always tell people,
get a job. I mean,
Yeah.
you got a job out of it. I got a job out of it. You got a job out of it. How did you end up at Guiding Light, Rob? We know how Mary Clay ended up.
Well, so I was at my first full-time casting position was at Warner Brothers, which was they brought me in to be the assistant, and it was like the first time I was like, "All right, I'm going to leave this theater stuff and do this." And there was really an entry-level job, but it was the first time I ever had it wasn't much, but a salary and benefits and vacation, and I quickly got moved up. Like within 8 months, I was the associate. So I did that job for about 2 years, and an agent had called me and said, "Guiding Light is looking for a casting director." It was really that simple. And I said, "Really?" And they said, "You want me to give a call? I know the executive producer, this guy named Paul Rausch." And I said, "Sure. Yeah, why not?" I kind of wasn't happy at this point at Warner Brothers. It was kind of getting mundane and late. We can go on and on, like really late night sessions. It's not,
So late.
yeah, it's not the way things do now, but like sessions at 11 o'clock on a Friday for a truck driver who has one line and they weren't happy. It was like that kind of, and you're like, "Uh-oh.
Every ethnicity. Yeah.
Yeah, I might need a change." And so this call came, and I met with Paul, but the truth was I met with Paul. They had already hired somebody, but Paul just did it as a favor. And then by chance, the deal fell through, or that casting director backed out. And then Paul's assistant called me like at 11 o'clock one day and said, Paul wants to see you again. Can you come back? And I said, sure. When? And they were like, now. And I was like, I'm at work. Like, can you make that happen? So
and Paul meant now.
Yes, Paul meant now. They were like, his feet are on the desk.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love, and I want to say I love Paul. I loved Paul. Right?
Yeah.
I miss Paul.
Paul. I know you may kill me for asking this question because you may not remember it, but I'm just curious. Do you know who like your first major role at Guiding Light or World Turns was?
Mark Dobies.
Oh wow.
Dr. Noah Burke was the first contract person.
Mine was a Mark also, Mark Collier.
Oh, that's awesome. Mark Dobies his family lives across the street from me.
That's amazing. Tell him I said hi. We're on Facebook together. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Oh, wow. I didn't know that you'd remember. That's awesome. I love both of those Marks. They're great guys. One of our fans was asking, was there a name, a famous, I don't want to say famous person, but is there a name, an actor that you really wanted but couldn't get for either show? Do you remember if there was somebody you personally really wanted to hire this person but couldn't get them?
I mean, there was always, actors that sometimes they didn't want to do daytime. So that you'd beg them and want them. But then there were also times where you'd have a screen test and the network and maybe your boss, the EP, wanted someone more than you.
Well, that was one of my questions. That was one of my questions. Is there somebody you remember that you desperately wanted, but the powers that be didn't?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to fire you.
Oh,
now.
you know who I always wanted, who tested for us like 5 times, was Mike Coulter. And I loved him. And he's that's
amazing.
He's why am I blanking?
He's on Evil.
Yes. And he's got his own show and he's just wonderful. And also Sterling.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And Sterling came in. I will say Chris loved him, our exec producer. And I brought him in, like his manager was a good friend of mine. So I was always bringing Sterling in. We just never found the right fit and the right part. But those are 2 actors that I really loved and we ended up going different ways.
Different direction. I had, there's 2 young actors. For me, it was always like they were younger actors trying to get their first job or second job. And these were both recurring parts. And one fell out on their own. So Kristen Bell came in for a recurring part and I just flipped. And, she wasn't Kristen Bell at the time. And we got along really great. And she did it. I think I taped her and then the role went to a contract. So we started as when I was looking, it was recurring, and then it went to a contract, and then I
didn't get to meet Kristen Bell. Damn it!
She didn't want to do a contract, and then I had a recurring part for a 16-year-old girl, and I had a 16-year-old Amanda Seyfried come, and I said, "This actor is special," and I could not. They didn't see it. They did not.
And she ended up on All My Children.
Yeah. It was just one of those ones.
Yeah.
We have to hire this actor. We have to hire this actress, and they just didn't.
That's got to be so frustrating for you.
It's funny, Rob. I was at Warner Brothers at that time, and I loved Kristen Bell for Smallville, for the blonde like journalist best friend, because she was doing Tom Sawyer on Broadway at the time.
Speaking of Allison Mack, I just started watching The Vow. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That is crazy.
That is crazy stuff. If anybody's watching HBO's documentary, The Vow, wow.
Yeah, you're like the blonde part.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to get into that.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Nothing to laugh at.
Rob, but one of the fans just reminded me, but you did cast Joan Collins, right? You.
Do we want to talk about that? Yes, I can.
Well, no, somebody was asking if you were there because you did. No, I mean that's a big get. That's a big get for daytime.
Yeah, no, I did. I am responsible for casting Joan Collins. Yes, Yeah, it was one of those things that it was sort of the timing was right. She was, I'm sure everybody got the call, every show got the call that she was interested in maybe doing daytime. And it was Paul. I took it to Paul, and his eyes sort of popped out of his head. And he said, "Really?" And I said, I can only tell you what the information I'm getting. And so, yeah, that was a big get at the time. And I remember for you, it was probably fun. I mean, I remember we were on the CNN tracker, on the news feed.
Oh, yeah.
I was at Guiding Light, and I thought, because, you work on, when we come from Warner Brothers, and it's prime time and pilots, and there's a lot of attention. And, you obviously work on a show like West Wing, and it's huge. Even though, we might be a small clog in that, you feel really connected to that. And at Guiding Light, it was, it's sort of different, it's sort of a little secluded, and it's daytime, and it's somewhat secretive in a way. So I remember when we cast Joan, and it was like literally on the news feeds, like Dynasty star joins Guiding Light. And so it got us a lot of attention, which I was proud of.
I was excited because she was at our Christmas party, remember?
Right.
Because we had joint Christmas parties, and I was like, oh my God, I get to meet Joan Collins. And they did call us too, but we couldn't.
Of course.
We couldn't get anything. I was begging because Dynasty is one of the reasons, I love Dynasty. That's why we hired a few people from there. But so it was just like.
Yeah, you hired John James. John James. I loved him.
Exactly. Don't think I wasn't like, oh my God, I worshipped you when I was young.
Me too. And he was Joan was nice too in a different way, but he was a really nice guy. I remember. He was a great guy.
He was pretty happy to be working. And plus his role was pretty hilarious. He was awesome. If you remember, he played Psycho.
Joan was
Psycho,
fun.
right? I couldn't remember. Yeah, she was a trip.
I mean, she's an icon. You know what I mean? I loved. I remember, I had small conversations with her, and then I was taking the train into work, and I was reading the Daily News, and it was just by chance these things happen. There was a picture of her and William Shatner from her Star Trek episode, which was literally like my favorite Star Trek episode growing up. And I'm like, how did this end up in the article was? So I remember
full circle, like it's
full circle. And I walked right to her dressing room. I knocked on her door, and I was, Miss Collins. It's Rob Decina. And I said, "Here, I just want to show you this." And she was like, "Oh, I remember that." And she started talking about the part and shooting Star Trek, and I was like, "This is worth it just for this."
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the fans can know what. Tell us the process. So, what happens first? Paul or Chris comes to you and says, "I have a role," and then what happens next for you guys?
Well, they, I don't know how, I would imagine GL did it similar, but, the writer's room was next door to us, which was helpful. And they would send out their weekly breakdowns of the scripts that were 6 weeks out from when we would shoot them. And they would have all the day players and the guest leads that were coming up. But if there was a big recurring coming up or a new contract, our EP would come into my office and sit down with me and sort of say, this is what we're shooting. This is what we're thinking about in the writer's room. What do you think about this and this? And, can you give us a list of ideas and stuff like that? And you start from there. But with all the just sort of regular recurrings and day players and under fives, I would get these little purple breakdowns of the script and just chart out how I wanted to cast it and get the shooting schedule and sort of go from there. But for the big roles, it was let's do lists of names and let's, start seeing people and get the breakdown out, which there's a breakdown of scripts that I'm talking about there, but there's also casting offices use something called Breakdown Services, which is a company that you send in the breakdown of the character and they send it out to every single agent in New York and LA or whatever region you want to send it in. And go from there.
And when I first started, it was a newspaper that would come out the next.
I know, it's physical. I used to deliver those. I worked.
So from the breakdown service thing was it?
Yeah,
it was like a paper.
And I remember when they would be like, okay, we're going to start putting our sides online because you can now download sides where it used to be
crazy.
We would either fax them or before that we would leave the sides out for actors at
It's
and
so
the actors
crazy.
would come pick them up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Now it's all digital. You know, you
Don't do anything. Yeah.
Oh, it's in an instant. I remember reading a Guiding Light breakdown and suggesting Jake Weary, Kim's son, to you, Rob.
Yes, that's right. That was you.
And she made him come in and audition, and then you got him after, right?
Yeah, she made him read. That's right.
Yeah,
I actually I cast him in a movie that I did too once because I did a lot of indie film as I was doing ATWT. Yeah, Jake was so good.
I love it.
Yeah,
I watch his show, Animal Kingdom. It's
so great. I'll tell you a funny Jake Weary story. This is a little sidebar for me, but I worked for WWE Wrestling for a year in the timeline of
which I love that you did that.
Which was amazing. And I was in North Carolina once because it was a road job. We were on the road, and John Cena in his schedule, because I was doing stuff with him, and he had to go. He was doing this small, I don't know, it's like a Nickelodeon movie, but it had to do with wrestling. And all of a sudden I look in, I'm watching him shoot his thing, and I look in the ring, and I'm like, I think that's Jake in the thing. And I literally text Zimmer, and I'm like, is Jake in North Carolina? And it was Jake. So I saw him like randomly on the road.
That's funny.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's just like becomes such a small world.
Do you remember?
I ended up working on the reboot of Dynasty as well.
Oh,
that's right.
That's awesome. Amazing. That's really full circle.
That's full circle. That's full circle.
Wow. Is it picked up again? Is it still on?
Well, with COVID, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I think it is. I think it's be back.
Yeah, I never tuned in, but I was a big from the first one.
Was that I did watch the reboot or the new one. Is that what was that? CBS Studios? What network was that on?
CBS Studios for CW.
For CW. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what your toughest role at Guiding Light and World Turns to cast was?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, you know what I found hard is we had. I thought I hated when you had to recast an iconic role. Like I really, that's the hardest part about daytime is, no other shows have been on 50 years and have these.
And who did you have to do? MC?
I had to recast Martha Byrne for Lily, which was like,
you got it right in a row.
Yeah. And, everyone's going to hate you and everyone's got, you just have to, so you just kind of have to do it because that's what they tell you to do. But I found that to be the hardest challenge. And then we had a couple roles. Like, I feel like Chris Hughes, we could never get someone we liked. Like, we kept having to recast that, So there were a couple roles like that just every second it would be like, we're recasting this. You're like, and they keep changing which way the character's going and stuff. But it's these classic roles that, were big when they were little or they, so people have.
But you ended with the great Cosgrove, so that was great.
I did, and he was so great, especially for that storyline with the heart and everything. I mean, it was wonderful. But I wanted Daniel. I was so mad at Rob. Rob and I had a Daniel Cosgrove war in LA one time, and he won, and he got him a Guiding Light. He moved a little quicker than me, and I was like.
I think an LA show wanted him to. That was always happening. I mean, I think that was the only time it really happened with us. And by the way, Guiding Light used to always lose because we didn't have any money. We
we always lost out.
We had less than you for believing. But yeah, I would agree that the recasting was always.
Who did you have to? Do you remember? And
I had a lot. I had Michelle.
Did you have to do Nicole Forrester? You got Nicole.
I had to do Nicole Forrester in 8 days or something like that. That was crazy.
Wow.
So I had Cassie, I had Michelle, I had Mara, I had Shane. It was like, the whole Lewis clan got turned over. I had a lot of age flipping, we used to do that a lot,
they aged someone like a decade in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's like they went off the show when they were 12 and now they're going to be 17 and in high school 6 months later.
We didn't even have them. We would just literally have them on Friday. They were 8 and on Monday they were 18.
It's true.
But I did that with Casey. Was it Casey? God, I can't believe
Yeah. Zach Rohrig?
Yeah, like he was like a little kid, and then Zach Rohrig came on, and then Billy Magnuson.
Yeah.
After that. Zach got Vampire Diaries or something. It got to be where we just didn't want to pay, and it was easier to I felt like we would hire our young kids as recurrings so that we could get these young kids who didn't want to commit to contracts. But you always ended up kind of getting then they would go get a primetime show and be like, see ya. And you'd be like,
and then you get
again.
It kind of messes you up then when that happens.
Yeah.
It was always a catch-22 because it's like, I go back to Kristen Bell. Maybe we hire her if that stays recurring, but she probably books a pilot 6 weeks later, and then the whole schedule is messed up.
Right. That happened with me with Matthew Morrison. He got Glee.
Yeah. Who did he play?
He had this big role planned, and then literally they just had to cut. I think actually no, I recast it with the guy from Friday Night Lights, Scott Porter. That's right. I forgot about that.
Oh, I actually remember that.
But it was one of those where it was one day it was Matthew Morrison, and then his agent called and said, oh, he booked a show, so see ya. And I was like, what? And then, but I mean, once again, these actors are doing what I get it. I know everyone's just doing their job, so I don't know.
But Alan, Mary Clay's right. There was definitely there wasn't a, hey, how do we figure that out? I know he's supposed to work 6 days for you. It was kind of like, hey, sorry, actor booked something and we're moving on.
Yeah.
And we're sort of left to pick up the piece. I mean, everybody, the producers and the
right.
I mentioned Paul, but obviously Mary Clay had really great consistency. She had one executive producer.
You had
big guy, John
Conway,
John, and then of course the wonderful Ellen Wheeler for a long time.
Oh, Ellen.
I had Ellen for a long time. I think it was about 4 or 5 years at least, the last 4 or 5. So, but so it depending on how they handled, okay, we have a problem. Do you write them out or do you recast them? And and then we were just always left to sort of having to fix it, which was
You get used to it.
Was there a recurring character that you loved so much that you always tried to push to get a contract role? Is there somebody you remember that you just?
Well, usually I found with us, we were all on the same page. I hired Jen Landon to do a 3-day recurring as a waitress in a diner. And
look what that became.
That's crazy.
We lucked out because everyone fell in love with her. And literally, I remember her second day, Chris Galvin came into my office and said, okay, we're writing an entire storyline for Gwen. I was like, well, wait. Let's see if Jen's available. Don't do that to me right now, please. But it all worked out, and I was really grateful for that. But that was fun because I love being able to get someone work like that, right? I mean, and Jen ended up killing it. I thought. I really loved it.
It's amazing. And that's the beauty of daytime. That conversation that doesn't happen in prime time, just because of a production schedule. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. If you work today on and they jumped on it and said, oh man, this person's great. It might have to be next season or the end, 8 years later, where they could just go and say, hey, we're gonna jump on this right now, That's
so exciting. It must be nice for both of you, Rob casting Tom Pelphrey and Mary Clay Jen Landon and watching them on Ozark and seeing her on Yellowstone. Must feel, give you a little glee of satisfaction. I mean, it's truly talented.
Yeah, I'm sure Rob feels this way. I'm proud of all the youngins from our show. They've all gone on to do quite a good body of work. And I will say that my daughter, who's 7, doesn't really understand that I used to work in a soap opera or whatever, but I do say a lot oh my God, she was on my show. And she's like, okay, Mom. I'm like, no, but I love her. I used to see her every day.
My husband gets sick of that too. I do that same thing all the time. We're watching television. Oh my God.
Yeah, I agree. No, I totally agree. I mean, Tom is, Tom Pelphrey and Matt Bomer, the two that always pop to my head when we have these conversations. Matt become very successful. Successful, well-known actor, and Tom Pelfrey, who just got snubbed for an Emmy, not only an Emmy nomination, he should have won an Emmy, but is a brilliant actor and is, he's reaching those heights that I thought he would, and he will continue to. I mean, he's just so great.
And World Turns reaped the benefits too, because they got Tom for a little while. World Turns got Tom for a little while too.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I love like Kristen Connolly. I loved watching her in Zoo. Like she was so good in that, and she's been working right now. She's having some babies.
Who did she do on World Turns? Because she was also Reva at a young age.
She played young Reva in the movie.
She did.
Of Reva. So I cast her out of school, and then Mary Clay dyed her hair.
We dyed her hair red, and she became Jennifer Farron. Basically, it was a new Jennifer, right?
Gotcha.
Like Jennifer died, but she was supposed to like be a ghost, or I don't even remember. Grayson was like obsessed with her somehow, but she was a different character, but it was supposed to sort of take the place of Jen.
Grayson, I'm trying to reach that man. I can't find that man anywhere.
I wonder where he is. I haven't seen him much.
I have no idea. Wait, you made me think of something. So you said somebody's name, I thought, or maybe one of the fans wrote something. Oh, I just lost what I was going to ask. Darn it. It was I know it was something that you said that made me think of it.
Grayson, Kristen Connolly, Zoo.
Yeah, it was Chris. It might have been Kristen Connolly. Oh, Jennifer Farron. It popped in my head. I mean, talk about another one. You cast her right out of college.
Right. She and Billy. I got them both from North Carolina School of the Arts, and I think that's where she's from. I know
you did. I get half credit for Jennifer.
Why?
Oh, you do?
Because you called me and you were struggling with this part, you said. And I said, I just met this actress. Did you go to the showcase? I think you went. I don't remember that. And I said, you should meet her. I said, I don't have anything for her, but she's great. I think I said something. I told her this, by the way. I think I said, if you got to take she's dressed like a little bit of like a
yes.
hippiness in here. Like she was.
We did a makeover. We did.
Yeah.
I always picked the people that we had to do makeovers on. It was always like, okay, well, I can see this if we change the hair color, if we do this, But that's right. It's funny.
But we used to do that all the time for each other. I mean, I must say that and Marnie Saeed at Days of Our Lives, when she was at Y&R, used to do the same. Like all the Teschner. I mean, we used to help each other out all the time.
We all were buddies and would call each other because we all knew. I mean, and there were many times because All My Children and One Life to Live were also shot in New York, like us. So we all battled over the same contract roles a lot. I mean, it was constant. So we'd all be testing at least 2 to 3 of the same people during screen tests for different roles. So it was just always funny to me when the press would say certain things. And it was like, we're really all just working together here. There's no like, oh my God, I'm going to get an ABC actor or they're this or that. It was really just like, we want the best person for the role. Every actor wants a job. And we want to, and everyone's sort of working together to make that happen. There was a little bit of competition, but it was all pretty friendly.
It was healthy. I used to say that casting a daytime show was more along the lines of being a general manager of a baseball team. So if I was a general manager of the Yankees, you know what I mean? You're constantly trying to make the team the best you can make it, whether it's by a draft or by a trade. So an actor who's available for another show, is it someone you could add to your roster and make the show better,
Exactly.
By the same perspective, if you can help someone else's team because you don't need that player at the moment, then you do that. I would never sit on it and say, oh, well, there's an actor I like, I'm not going to tell another.
Right, exactly.
Because maybe I'll have a role in 6 months,
Oh yeah, and we definitely had those calls to each other so many times.
All the time.
Help me! Even if it was a day player, it's like, oh my God, I've seen 80 people. I can't pull this. Do you have any ideas?
Absolutely.
And I know I can't remember who we lost, but I'm sure we lost some actor that you both wanted to probably like All My Children or One Life to Live, you know, due to a bidding war or something. And does anything stand out? Do you remember losing anybody you really wanted?
Well, I know right before I got there, so it was the person I took, it's Jimmy, right? Jimmy's place is
Jimmy Gore, yeah.
Jimmy Gore, yeah. So now Paul was awesome. So they got Paul, but I know that they had also tested, I don't know if it was for the same role, but Josh Duhamel. And I remember that they really wanted Josh Duhamel. And someone didn't, though. And I don't know who, maybe the network or something. I don't know. Somehow it didn't happen. And then he was exploding on All My Children right when I got there. And I remember they'd be like, Josh Duhamel, like, we had him, you know. That was sort of there. But that's the only one I remember where I wouldn't even.
But we lucked out with Paul Layden for sure.
They love Paul. Oh my God,
we lucked out with.
We kept adding, rewrite. You know, they'd be like, Paul, can you come in for this? And can you come in?
Yeah, Paul was great.
He's a great writer too.
Rob, do you remember anybody?
I don't specifically, but I remember that happening. I remember it always being, you know, that it did always seem like if you were looking for a specific type, that all the shows, it was like the writers all spoke to each other too, and they were all adding those sort of similar sort of characters or parts. So it was always the sort of similar actors. And, you know, casting daytime is not, I mean, nobody's feeling bad for anybody here. It's not easy because you can't get every actor you want. There's a lot of actors that just didn't want to do it, or the money is not sort of equivalent. So, you know, when actors have to say, do I want to sign on for a 3-year commitment, they can fire me, but for a 3-year commitment at X money, or wait to see if, you know,
I get
a pilot for much more money.
Movie. Yeah.
Or a movie. So.
Well,
but
Mary,
at the same time, we were able to, which I loved, because casting for daytime, we were considered producers, so we were able to cast our day players and some of our smaller recurrents without the EP approval and stuff. And so that was really nice because we did get to hire a lot of like theater actors who their agent would call and say their insurance is about to run out. They need to do a SAG project or an after project. And you'd be like, oh, okay, I can find a day player role for them. And, you know, and it was really fun to be able to pick your own actors and stuff like that for those smaller roles. And that they're, especially the theater actors, I loved who don't normally book a ton of TV. It was great to be able to give them work in front of the camera to sort of help them. I
totally 1,000% agree. That was the best part of the job. I actually remember when I was interviewing and I was asking about the process, because I literally had a 11 p.m. rehearsal with producers in Chelsea for this tow truck driver, and it was, you know, crazy. You know, one line, and I said, "Well, how do you work your sessions for the, you know, those kind of parts?" And it was like, well, no, you do that. We don't have time for that. You cast that. We'll just see them when they work. And I thought that doesn't happen as for a casting director. So we have choices. So I totally agree. It was the best part. And I'll tell you, because I'm older now, I hear it all the time. You know, an actor will come in and I'll say, hey, how are you? Come on in. And you just, my back's turned to maybe get the camera not here. Hey, you may not remember me. And I know what they're going to say. They always say, you gave me my first job.
Yeah.
Just graduated from college. Used to give all these, you know, actors right out of college. They're, you know, an under five.
So great. Yeah.
You know,
you definitely did. And Mary Clay, you cast somebody in December of 2005 to play Luke Snyder, and he wants to say hello.
Hey guys. Hey. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Speaking of casting somebody in their first job, that was you for me.
I know. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How is everything? I follow you on Instagram, so I know a little bit.
Yeah, things are good. I mean, I'm in New York still. I was out in LA for a little bit, but I'm back.
How are you doing in New York? Like, are you guys safe? And
yeah, we're doing well. It was really you know, kind of scary at the top of all of this, but I think that because New York was the epicenter, now that it's, you know, settling down a little bit, people are very, very aware of what it was. you know, so people
So
like
they take it seriously.
yeah, people are taking it really seriously, which is great.
So Van, do you remember the process of meeting with Mary Clay for the first time?
Yes, I remember going out to Brooklyn, and I remember the room that we were in.
Which, by the way, we had that also. It was daytime and then also Brooklyn.
Yeah,
no one
like,
wanted to go to Brooklyn.
way in the middle of nowhere, like way far out. And I remember it was a scene with John Hensley for, I think, for my final callback. And I had talked to an actor who had been on a soap, who I knew because I knew nothing about soaps. I didn't grow up watching them or anything. And I remember that actor saying, no matter what and who you're talking to in the scene, you're a little bit attracted to them. And I was like, oh, but this is a scene with my dad. but I sort of just did that anyway.
It's true, though. If it's not your parents, they do like chemistry.
Yeah, but
you never know.
And I think, honestly, part of the reason why I booked it, because I honestly had no idea what I was doing, was because I looked a lot like Jake Weary. And so I thought,
well, and you did a good job on the audition.
Thank you.
You did a really good job. So
yeah, I did
as well.
I had no idea how I did. I just was like, okay, I'm out in Brooklyn and now I'm gone. And I think I got cast, but there was like a month or so before I started shooting. So
yeah,
I would try to watch the show and figure out, you know, who everybody is, because in soaps, everybody's just talking about everybody else. And if you don't really know that, like if I'm talking about Dusty and I don't know who Dusty is, just trying to figure out, like I remember just watching it for like a month, because this was obviously before you could stream anything, and just like trying to figure out where Luke fits in this whole world. Yeah. Yeah.
And he fits in multiple ways too. So
yeah. And then also just like, I remember doing like a deep dive. I think it was like the beginning of Wikipedia of his character, and like just I was like, okay, I've been kidnapped. So my Holden, Holden's not my dad. Damien is my dad. Who's Damien? Because Damien didn't come back until a couple years since me being on it. And I was like, okay, and you know, it's super fun. Like I loved working on the show, and it, like, you know, looking back on that time, like, it was always interesting, because even though I was just like living my own life, the character was, you know, doing insane things. And
well, you guys were a super couple.
Yeah,
I mean,
we were.
You know, I mean, so that was, you had not just the show, but then you were like an icon. I mean, people, you know, you and Jake helped with a sort of a movement of, you know, so
absolutely.
There was that piece to it as well. I can't remember, did we have you audition once you were already established? When we were hiring Jake later on, did we have you read together?
Yes, you did. You did, because yeah, it was, I remember, because there was like maybe 5 or 6 of them. And I remember just Jake, I called him the tall one, because I forgot his name. He was a very good friend of mine.
We were like, who'd you like? We asked you too.
Yeah. Well, Anthony Kerrigan, who's now on, he just got nominated for an Emmy for Barry. He's the he was one of them. So I was pushing for him because I knew him from college. Yeah. But I'm so happy about it. Yeah.
Van, do you remember, did Mary Clay like give you any, or do you remember, were you nervous doing that?
Yeah, I was so nervous. I don't remember any, I don't think I got any notes. I might have, I don't remember if I did or not.
I think we did, but I usually was always just trying to prep them for what the room was going to be like and sort of how our EP worked. And
yes.
Because it was so fast, and like there wasn't a lot of feedback in the room. It was sort of like, so I always did try and prep when I call you kids, but when younger people were testing, just to sort of let them know you're not going to probably get feedback in the room. It's going to be pretty quiet. Like, you know, it doesn't mean you didn't do a great job. It just means we're moving along. So just don't get disheartened.
I do remember that happening.
If you kind of, if he's like, goodbye, and you're like, okay.
especially if it's an actor like Van who said he hadn't done daytime before or new
Right.
daytime. It's got to be intimidating to just come into that, because what our world is is unlike any other,
Yeah.
Right. It is.
Any
It
other-
is. I mean, I one time cast this actor who I loved, and he did primetime all the time, and I'd cast him in a ton of stuff, and he'd done Broadway, and he came in. It was just for a 2-day part, and it had a lot of dialogue though. And this is the only time this happened. I got a call from the control room. And they were like, "This guy can't remember his lines," and like they didn't want to deal with that with the day player, And he came in so I had to recast it. And he came in my office and said, that was crazy. He was like, "I've never moved that fast in my life." And I just was kind of proud of all the daytime actors, because it was like, this guy's done a lot and had a lot on his resume, but it's like, yeah, they have to do blocking and memorize and everything really quickly, as well as do a good job acting.
Yeah.
And, so it was, I really was shocked at how I was like, oh, wow, it's really hard to do daytime.
Well, Rob, 20 years ago this week, you gave this gentleman his break on Guiding Light, Jordi Villasuso. I just found out that it was 20 years ago this week that he started.
Oh God.
That means
Oh my
Jordy,
God, we're so old.
I can age Jordy now because he was.
Thank you.
15.
Really?
He was 15 when we met. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. How are you?
Jordy.
Great to see you guys.
Jordi, Van, Jordi. I don't know if you know each other.
Hello.
Jordi's on Young and the Restless now.
When
Back to work, right?
when
We
you
are.
asked
We've
me,
been for 6
go ahead,
months
buddy.
now.
What do you
I
remember?
You had said, was there like a hard role? And so Mark Dobies was my first part. Jordy was my second contract. And, they were like, we want a young Andy Garcia,
Oh wow.
18 to
That's
20,
funny.
really handsome, Latino. And I said, uh-oh. like, I don't know that I'm gonna. And I went to LA, and I may have told him this before. And he walked in. He I called him or whatever, and he walked in. And before he said anything, I said, if he could act, he's the guy. I just called Jordy, and I was like, if he can act, he's the guy. And he won an Emmy, so he can act.
and he's related to Andy Garcia.
And then he
Yes.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Crazy, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Mary Clay, do you know
I miss
Jordi?
you, Jordy.
Excuse me?
Do you know Jordi?
I don't.
No. Hi.
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 And
I
Van,
think I don't think I was at ATWT yet when you cast Jordy, was I?
No.
No.
Yeah.
No,
Although-
because it literally was like he was within the first 6 months that I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started August 2000.
Crazy.
Yeah,
So
he's
crazy.
from Florida. How's my memory?
Good.
That's good.
And he was living in LA, and I don't even think you're in LA long.
Do you remember who his agent was?
That's a good test, Mary Clay.
Uh,
You remember who Van's was?
I do.
think it was,
Oh,
was
yeah.
it the,
Wait,
was
I
it
don't
the
know
LA
Van's manager.
division of HWA? Am I close? Was it Gold Marshak? Was it
Bonnie Likey.
Bonnie, yeah.
pretty close? Pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A question for Jordi and Van. I know you've done this about 1,000 times. What would you say is the hardest audition you've had, and why?
It was right as World Turns was ending, and right before that, I had shot a horror movie, and so I was out for a month shooting the film, and then went back to World Turns, and they had to stack all of my scenes for the past month into a week. So I was doing like maybe 40 pages a day, and then on top of that, I had an audition for a horror film, another horror film, where the character is being stalked and killed in the scene. And in the middle of the audition, with just everything, like all of the change, all of the work I've been doing, I had a full-on panic attack. And it was I had never had one before. And it was just awful. So that is the hardest audition I ever did.
Yeah.
It was just everything compiled, and then just kind of tapping into like horror. Yeah, so I was like, that was the hardest. It was down in Soho somewhere. It was not fun.
Yeah, I had an experience where I had to play like an announcer of sorts, like a Mario Lopez extra kind of broadcast personality, and I didn't have that in my wheelhouse because you got to turn that on, and it's a very specific, and just doing it. I remember and the casting director, God bless her, she really tried to work with me, but like literally I couldn't get it. I was like sweating by the time I like walked out. I was just like, I'm so sorry I wasted your time. But it was just one of those things that, some skills from the one day to the next, it's hard, especially something like that that's so specific that you really have to have that in your wheelhouse.
Well, just know as a casting director, we take that into account, and everyone has a bad day.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you know that by now. You both have been doing this a while, but I would definitely not bring back in an actor that I know their work if they had a bad audition. Like that's. I mean, everyone has those days.
You'd give them a second chance if you knew the actor. Yeah.
Yeah. Even for that part, if it's, if the person didn't respond the way I wanted them to, the producer or director, I may say, look, I don't know what happened there, but can you give me another chance to bring this person back in? Because I think it can work,
If I were to suggest any advice to an actor, I would say before even getting started in this business, see if you can be an assistant, an intern at a casting office. It is the best education for actors, I feel like.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah. If you could be a reader in the room,
to
do that. And if you still want to be an actor after you're a reader, then
it's the best. Yeah.
Then it's in your blood.
Yeah.
Jordy, were you nervous when you what you remember from screen testing at Guiding Light?
It was funny. I was surprisingly not super nervous. They had flown me to New York, and I had just gotten really comfortable living in Los Angeles. I was 19, and I was going to start going to a university here, and I finally had like a social life. When I first moved to LA, I was really lonely, and then I finally, over time, got to know some people. So, in New York City, definitely had an allure to it, but I wasn't grasping for the part. Although I really loved the role. It was the funnest. That my first show I did, I was shooting 2 Glocks at the same time, like Chow Yun Fat style, like doing all this action gangster stuff that I dreamt of as a kid, and it manifested itself on Guiding Light, it was one of the roles that I still cherish to this day. It was so fun what we were able to do on that show.
It was a great part, actually. This young guy.
It was a great part. Both Jordy and Van, had great part of great families, and somebody else who Mary Clay and Rob gave a role to, Mr. Daniel Cosgrove.
Oh, there he is.
It's not Daniel, who we had mini fights over.
Hello, Daniel. What's up?
Hi.
Danny, I don't know if you heard that, but Mary Clay had mentioned earlier that she and Rob fought over you because she wanted you much earlier than she got you.
Well, hey, that's nice, because the way I heard it was they fought. You take it. No, you take it. You take it. No, you. No.
If I knew what your humor was like, I would have treated you away. Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The best.
He's the best. Daddy, how are you, buddy?
Danny is one of the funniest people.
Oh,
I know.
You both, Van and Jordy, both got to work with.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How's
And it
everybody
is true.
doing?
We didn't get to use his humor. I mean, he actually at the end there for Chris Hughes, he had some humorous stuff he got to do, but really it was a bit more dramatic with the heart. Wasn't that the heart?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
You can't have too much humor when you're getting a heart was it a heart replacement or something?
Yeah, wasn't it from
From his
from
from
the doctor.
Yeah,
it was
Yes.
from your boyfriend.
Yes,
Yeah.
my last
Who was
scene
hit by a
listening to
train.
my last scene on the show was listening to his heart in your chest with a
Yeah, that's why you were gonna fall in love
Yes.
with Chris Hughes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Heart.
yes. That's it. That was for the spinoff. That was the spinoff we were
Indeed.
going for. I was like, yeah.
Danny, are you driving right now?
So I'm in my.
Are you in the trunk of your car?
I'm in the trunk, and I need someone to come and save me. Am I on a delay?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
just
But it's
just a
good. It's
little.
giving us a chance to catch up to you.
Hey,
Is there a
Danny,
little-
do you remember meeting Rob for the first time for Bill?
I totally remember. Yes, I do. It was. Do you remember, Rob?
Of course.
Okay. Well, it was 2002, right? And I think, Rob, I think you were sent, if I remember correctly, tape from a movie first that was coming out. And and I think you were like, okay, this is interesting, but I don't think this is what we're looking for. And if I remember that correctly. But
Well, it was National Lampoon's Van Wilder
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
was in the theater,
Yeah.
Your role was hilarious.
and they sent me that tape, which is completely not, a daytime thing. But of course,
And
he-
not Bill Lewis.
no, and not Bill Lewis. I said, but of course, I'd love to meet him, and if he was willing to read, which was great because he'd already done a soap, and Danny and I became fast friends. He was, he cracked me up in the audition, and Danny's good for a set. I'll tell you that, right, Jordy? I mean, he keeps it there. Oh, there we go.
I'll come back.
He keeps it light, Danny.
Oh, he's the best.
Oh, God.
He's the best.
Oh my God, he's so.
He literally cracks up.
He is so.
Entire.
And,
Emmy Ryland, when she was on, said literally Guiding Light would reschedule her and Danny to the end of the day because they couldn't get through scenes.
I could imagine.
Yeah,
I could imagine.
totally.
Here he is.
Okay.
Danny, you got to pay for better Wi-Fi.
Better.
Oh, you got
Yeah, right.
inside.
Yeah, I think he went
I
inside.
ran into the house. I ran into the house.
Oh my God.
You need to spend more on your
connection now.
Upgrade the Wi-Fi, Costco.
Yeah, get some broadband in there.
The kids are probably using it.
Right?
Yeah,
Knowing him, this is all staged.
right.
It's all part of all part of the bit.
That's
part of it.
still everything, doesn't he?
Mhm.
Jordy, was Danny there like your last? Must have been like your last year or last
Year, yeah.
Yeah,
2002,
towards the end,
2003.
he was there. He would get involved with the young cast, I believe, and I think there was at one point we were all living in a house in one of the storylines, and I remember him vividly being there, and us just like everyone just losing our shit. It was a fun time, man. What a great time.
Yeah.
And you think,
Man, I
and
didn't remember.
They moved
I didn't remember
a
he
lot.
gave you the heart, or your boyfriend's heart.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, because my boyfriend
yeah.
got hit by a train. And so but somehow the heart survives.
I was so upset when they killed him. I'm like, really?
Yeah, it was kind of shocking.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the show was ending, so it's not like he was, losing his job necessarily, but
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Mary Clay, because Van replaced Jake, because when Jake left, was
Wait,
it
what?
difficult?
Oh,
When
Jake Weir.
Weir
Yeah.
left-
I was thinking Jake Silverman. I was like, what?
No. Was it hard to find Van?
There were
You
a few
remember?
obstacles. No, I mean, it was. I would say it was no different than it is recasting anything else. There was definitely obstacles, but also the storyline was taking a turn where
Right.
he was going to come out of the closet, and so that was actually, believe it or not, back then. I mean, when 2004, when was that?
Oh,
2005.
it was an
It was
issue.
still very new. So
Yeah, it was-
he had to kiss someone on camera, and and so we actually did have some actors who weren't wanting to do that, which I'm sure that all those people be hitting themselves now, because it was such a great role, and it ended up being like, you know, I mean, Cyndi Lauper called us and was like, I want to come and do your show. Just
that's
she,
cool.
you know, so it was like, but that, I remember that was really the only obstacle. And then of course, you know, because you're recasting, you want the same look and coloring and blah, blah, but no, we loved man. I mean, we found him pretty quickly, I feel like. So that was luck. I mean, that does not happen often.
Well, I'd say with these three gentlemen, we lucked out quite well.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Danny, what was your hardest audition? Do you have a hardest audition story?
The hardest audition?
Or
no, you know what? Auditioning, I have a few stories, and I kind of but I like, I talked about them and then I stopped talking about it. But then as I'm an older feller now, and people, you know, will ask advice. There's a couple things that had happened to me in my career that I kind of pass on to younger actors, and just anything. Actually, it could be in anything in life. For example, my very first. Well, first, can I tell you my very first audition? I remember it because it was for Guiding Light, and it was pre-Rob. And so one thing was that I thought I nailed it. I walked out of there feeling really good. And they said, well, you know, he's
was it for Bill?
Another thing. And they gave me advice. Now, there's two things. When you hear these things and you think you did a really good job, like what you wanted to do, you're either going to take it personally and just like not, or you're going to at least respect and be appreciative of the fact that you got some, you know, criticism, and really kind of weigh that and take it in. And I did. I really, you know, it helped me like recalibrate and want to just be better. But I do remember, when I auditioned for Guiding Light, and Rob said, okay, I can see past this tape, but will he come and screen test? I was in California at the time, and I screen tested with Beth Chamberlain. And what happened was this: we came in and we did a scene where it's like I opened a bottle of champagne, and you know, I'm supposed to pour a glass and for each of us. But as I did, I poured her glass first. It started bubbling over like into her lap. So I just quickly stayed in the scene. I grabbed it. I kind of ad-libbed the line, something, you know, just to keep it flowing. And we finished the scene. And we finished the scene. And I feel like those are those moments that happen that you can either, again, you have it kind of in your mind of how it's all going to happen, but you got to be, just like in life, you got to be on your toes. You got to be flexible. You got to be loosey-goosey. You can't be rigid. And so sometimes, like in the moment, you just got to work with what's in front of you. And yeah, it was a fun little moment. And I mean, I don't know if that was what got me the job, but
it absolutely was.
Yeah.
It was the difference maker.
Yeah.
But I do remember that now that you brought it up. And I do remember kind of, because I'll always say whatever I have to say to help the actor get the job. And I do actually remember kind of selling that as a, you know, look how easy he was. Look how he was able to go with the flow there. He didn't stop, you know, that's really great. He's spontaneous in the moment, you know. So I do remember happening.
Great. Yeah.
But that's great advice for people listening as well, because just don't freak out. Go, you know, use it. Use it and make it work.
And I don't want to, but again, in case you got people, actors or anything listening, I will say this, and I know Rob wrote a book. Mary, do you have a book? Rob, pick that up.
Rob did write a book.
Yeah, they got books, so pick those up.
This is Rob's book.
Oh my God.
I mentioned in it.
Crazy.
That's great.
Yes, Mary Clay is in it.
Except
But,
for
yeah,
you say,
Actually, Jordan's in it too.
I'm in it
Emmy
too, yeah.
nominated.
Yeah.
You got to revise that.
Oh, well, this is when it came out. You just not.
All right. Yeah.
And this is available on Amazon for anybody.
Oh my God, thank you. I
Everybody
make
gets
a
that book.
dollar every time one sells. So.
Hey, I
Even
bought
if
like
you're
5
not in the
copies for you there, buddy.
Yeah.
Danny's in it too, I think. Danny, you're all in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, Danny and Jordy did it, and Mary Clay did an interview. Yeah.
Van and Jordy, do you have a audition story sort of like that where something went wrong and you used it? Or
I just to relate to what Danny said, that's like the magic stuff. That's the stuff that, like, if it happens, those are like happy accidents. And when you catch those on screen, I feel like that's just the best. So yeah, I would agree 100% with that. You got to lean into that. And honestly, like, we all have these ideas of, and I've been fortunate because now in Y&R, I've sat in on a couple screen tests, and in this medium, and they've actually asked me, like, well, what do you think? And right off the bat who's going to be able to handle the work and who's not going to be able to handle it. And it's what Danny said, it's that easy flow. You have a point of view, you do it, and then all those little moments, you just work with them, because that can bring out the chemistry too if you have a partner there in the room, and that all that stuff pops on screen. So I've had a couple of those where it just, you could feel it in the room, and it's like, I think everyone can kind of feel it. It's not necessarily like, ooh, I nailed it, but there was like this visceral kind of magic in the room that like kind of crackles. And those are kind of the moments that that make the auditioning process less arduous, or less like, oh God, I gotta go do this. But when it happens, it's like, oh man, now I've been fed. I can go on with my day. And if I got the job or not, I did what made me want to become an actor in the first place. You know what I mean?
And as a casting person, the flip side of that is when you witness that, it's amazing, and everyone is jazzed, especially for a screen test. Everyone's like, oh my God. But then the worst is when that happens, everyone knows who they want, and you go in to do the deal, and the deal blows up. And you're like, what? Like, you weren't in the room. Like, but it's like, oh, this other thing came up, or this, and you're just like, oh, for once, everyone agreed on the same person. Everyone was excited. It didn't happen often, but when it did, it's really, from a casting standpoint, so sad.
Yeah,
well,
I can imagine.
Well, Danny, Jordy, and Van, before I let you go, speaking of those moments, is there a moment at Guiding Light or World Turns or Young and the Restless where the same sort of thing, wasn't supposed to happen, the bubbly happened, or, something that you remember and you just took it and ran with it?
I have. I mean, I would say it's probably easier. Like, when didn't it happen?
Yeah.
Things are all, I was on the show 2002, 2005, and then 2007, 2009, Guiding Light. And then I was able to join World Turn the last 6 months. And so, the bulk of my time being at Guiding Light, everyone, I love, what I love about these shows are they're like the closest thing to these little theater companies where everyone kind of just kind of gets in a rhythm. You get to know one another really well, and you have fun. And it's soaps is a tough racket for everybody because it's so fast paced. It's 5 shows a week that we're airing, and they were shooting maybe by the end of it like 8-9 shows a week, but. I had so much fun working with and working with Crystal and again Beth, where we would always there would always just be things happening. Of course, Jordan Clark, who played my dad, always kept you on your toes, and we always had so much fun. But I mean, everybody, I can name everybody that I worked with. I remember when there was a scene, Joy, I don't know if you remember, but you were supposed to attack me, fight me, and then you got up, your character was inebriated, and you like threw a punch at me and stuff. But you were so nice. You were so nice that you were worried about like really like hurt me. That it's like, it's like almost, you were willing to almost sacrifice your
His macho shape.
Yeah, he was like, hey man, I just, and I'm like, no, you do what I'm right here with you, buddy. And so yeah.
I actually connected once on screen, and they kept it. Oh, and you could see my reaction. I connected with Oliver McCree, who played Romeo, and I was on a boat course, shirtless with water dripping all and we had this really involved fight scene.
Yeah.
And I connected on his chin. And I kept going, but they kept the reaction of me connecting. So you see my face go, and then they cut to him.
Yeah.
And then we just kept the scene going.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's my little. So that's probably why I didn't want to. I was probably playing it cool when we had our fight scene. I didn't want to.
I just want. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I did, because with Mary and Rob, I just do want to address that. It was always awesome because their doors are always open. And that was another thing about, it's not just like the actors and what's happening on set. It's like everybody, it's every department. But, Mary being in her office over down in Brooklyn and when both stages over there, Rob, that, I'd go up there and visit all the time. And it was just really great because, I'm filled with anxiety. Like when I'm anxiety, I enter the building kind of a nervous wreck, and I leave, and it takes me about an hour to decompress from a day's work, because it's anxiety inducing. And these personalities here are just calming and soothing, and they're just like controlled. And it's just like, I can go and just have a normal conversation if you need to. And not that I couldn't anywhere else, but you always knew that, doors were open if you needed someone to talk with or something.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was just such a community. And I remember I'd hang out in Kate's office all the time. I'd help her sort headshots when I wasn't on set.
I know. And Lamont, I miss
Lamont.
It was hard not seeing Lamont and Kate every day. For 10 years I saw them every day, so it was really hard. Like, we all were so sad when the show.
I talked to Lamont recently. It was great to hear his voice.
I did too. He's so great. He's doing well. I saw him last time. I love him. And also, just piggybacking off what Daniel said, I texted with Jen Landon the other day randomly. Like, I had said something, and she said the same thing. She said, "Oh, I miss stopping by your office." And that was the great thing about the show, is we all would, because I would go into people's offices too. Pop into the writer's room. I'd pop upstairs and go to the producers, and and just you all kind of were hanging out and talking and sort of.
Well, it gets back to that theater thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's everybody's in the same building. The feed is on, we can see you working, going to the office. What you're shooting today is going to air not in fairly soon. I mean, it's probably later now, but when we were shooting, compared to other mediums, where, you might be, not shooting in your set building. I think that did lend itself to that sort of community and sort of openness that we all kind of strived for.
Hey, Dan, are you still teaching?
Yeah, I am. But going back on what Rob was saying, something that is also just really, really wonderful about starting off on a soap is that every job I've had since then that's in New York, somebody's there who I know. Somebody from hair, somebody from makeup, wardrobe. I think especially in New York, because it's a smaller sort of community than LA, but like.
So do you see Eldo and Teresa and stuff?
I haven't seen Teresa. I saw Eldo when I did I'm forgetting the title of the movie. The Ethan Hawke Priest, First Reformed. When I did First Reformed, Eldo was the
makeup person.
Yeah. My character had all these tattoos.
I did a movie with him too, when the show ended, this movie, and he was like on it, and I was like, oh my God.
But Alan, I am still teaching. We've been teaching via Zoom. It's been actually going very well. I teach on-camera acting.
How can people find out if they want to?
They can go to mnactingstudio.com. MN is the initials of the studio's founder, Matt Newton. And sort of the deal that what we have is that all of the teachers are still working actors. So it's like people who are, in it with our students, as opposed, to people who maybe did it 20, 30 years ago.
Well, daytime actors can teach any actor to do anything, because if you can survive in daytime, you really can do anything. I mean, Danny, you did Billions, and there was Beth Chamberlain, there was Frank Grillo, all Guiding Light alumni. You know, all three of you in the same episode, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just what Van was saying, like you'll work, and everyone's paths kind of cross, which is always so nice. There's been a number of shows that has happened on, which is always great, because, you know, it's when I'm not working, it's, you know, it's family and what the heck is happening in our world and all this. So it's always nice. And yeah, I've done a little teaching myself, but I worked where it was Matt Newton a little bit, and I go out and I'm out in Long Island, Creative House, and here in Greenwich Performing Arts. Like, I'll do that, and you know what? I got to tell you, just this. I started a couple years ago, and just a little here and there, and then it kind of grew, and for me, it actually, because it's anywhere from like middle school kids to high school to, you know, to adults to, you know, 50s, 60s, and some people have been doing it a while, some people are trying something new, and it actually, I get just as much out of it. It almost like reignites of that whole of, you know, those creative juices, and it's really, it's always so nice to see people from you know, different you know, times in their life, periods of life, like getting into it, and for different reasons, you know, and so I it's very fulfilling, actually. Sometimes it's more fulfilling than being on a set, but it's been great.
Well, that's awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by to say hello to Rob and Mary
So good
Clay.
to see you.
God, that was a nice
Hi,
surprise
Jordy.
to see
Nice
you
to
guys.
meet you.
It's great to
Jordy,
see
I
you
can't
guys.
believe 20 years. It's crazy.
That's crazy. That makes me feel so old. My God.
You are so
Me-
old. You are so
I am.
old,
Me
Rob.
too.
Thanks.
Danny, so good to
I'm
see you, my
catching up
friend
to Danny.
Dan.
Yeah, you too, guys.
Great
Everybody
to
looks
see you all.
great.
Bye,
Good to see you
guys. Thanks for popping in. That was really great.
Yeah,
Thank you, guys.
totally.
Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work.
Hey,
Yes.
thank you, Mary, and thank you, Rob, both, because, you
Bye,
know,
sweetie.
who knows what would have happened if weren't for you two giving this
Absolutely.
old fart a chance.
Stay well, you three.
All right,
Thanks,
bye.
guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So funny. I wanted to do that.
Oh, you got us. You got us.
It was like, this is your life. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, no.
Oh, when I saw Van, I was like, oh my God, is he doing that for me? Who could it be? Who could it
Yeah.
Well,
Oh my God.
I think a fan had posted somewhere that it was Jordy's 20th anniversary, and I could not believe, you know, it made me feel old. You know, it's just like, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'll tell you that I love Jordy. I love Dan. Danny and I are close. We don't get that far from each other. We see each other pretty.
He looked amazing.
Yeah, he looks great. And Jordy,
So did,
maybe the nicest guy for a guy playing a hothead kid. He was the nicest guy. But Jordy made me look good. You know, I was a young casting director that they took a chance on, and like I said, he was my second contract, and that was not an easy task. And to get Jordy and let him go, you know, like go work. You know, he made me look good. You know, so I owe Jordy a lot. So I love seeing him.
well, and you know, he had a much bigger role than Dobie's. I mean, Mark's role was decent, but putting Jordy into the Santos family, he was able to shine for you, really.
And they were writing him 5 days a week. I mean, after like it was like the Jed Landon thing. I mean, he was already on contract, but he worked a few days, and I remember them going, "Oh my God, we can do something with this guy." And
Right.
he was.
And that's great for him too, because not only the work, but he makes a ton of money.
Yeah,
you know, working more days like that and stuff.
And then he booked the
For a
pilot.
young actor, that was always one of my selling points was, you know, some of these kids out of the conservatories that didn't want to do daytime. I'm like, well, would you rather wait tables, or would you rather actually do what you just trained to do and make a living and
Totally.
learn how to work in front of a camera. And they'd all be like, oh, I didn't think of that. You get someone who didn't want to do it, but then a year later they come back and be like, yeah, I'm willing to do a contract.
Yeah.
Like that sounds great,
Listen, it's a long career. I mean, look at Danny's been doing movies and he does prime. He's done every daytime show. Jordy, I mean, he was 18, 19 years old. He did 3 years. He booked a pilot. He did movies. He booked other series in daytime. It's a long career,
Well, right. And they're actors. They want to work, I mean, people think, but also I used to joke, I'd be like, Steven Spielberg isn't watching ATWT thinking, oh, I'll never use that person for my big movie because they did As the World Turns. I'm like, you are not on their radar. So you can still go out and audition for that big budget film. And this way you'll feel comfortable and also be used to having fans. And, there was other pieces to daytime, not just the acting, but they would get really big fan bases for young kids. That's something as an actor, that's a part of it that you have to learn to manage. And also get, finance people working for them and agents and managers. And it really taught them all aspects of the business at a young age.
And here's the other thing about daytime. I mean, I grew up
Alan.
I grew up watching, but what these actors gain being in a living room 5 days a week is those fans follow them for the rest of their career. Like Julianne Moore, basically, I was introduced as Franny on As the World Turns, and it does help. I mean, she was a talented actor on that show. I mean, you don't, if the person isn't talented or you don't fall in love with the character. If
they're a hit.
You are with them forever. And these three, will have fans forever for the roles that they played on our shows. Have you ever been able to cast somebody since that you worked with on World Turns or Guiding Light?
Rob, you go first, and then.
Well, I'm sure I have. I know all those guys audition for me all the time. Jordy. I don't know if he's on contract now, but he's done self tapes, and Danny's come in for stuff. We have actually a hard time getting to the auditions, as you can imagine, because we're.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But even EJ Bonilla just auditioned for me for.
Oh, great.
Everyone. I mean, it just happens.
Well, Rob is currently the VP of casting at CBS, and Mary Clay, you're casting out of Louisville, where you're living, right?
Yep. I did when the show first ended. I did a couple seasons with an Adult Swim series, and with that, I brought in. It was a comedy. It's a really funny show, but so I brought in a lot of actors from the show, like Billy Magnuson. I hired on a film, and then I hired him on another short, and then I hired him as this hilarious character on this Adult Swim series, Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. And so it was always fun when I think I brought Van in for one of those too. I mean, it was just fun to bring in the actors because like we said before, like a theater company, you get to know these actors. There are a ton of actors that I've cast through the years that I don't have relationships with, just because when you're doing prime time and stuff, the casting is pre-production. You're not on the set usually. So you don't bond with the actors, you're not seeing them on the day to day. You cast them, you come in for the audition, they don't know who you are, you negotiate with their agent, and then they go on set and they don't really put it together because they're stressed when they meet you. So, that was the fun part of the soap also, is you build a relationship with the actors you cast, and then you get to bring them in for other stuff and, visit and catch up.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference? Would you if the shows were still here, do you think you'd still want to be doing?
Oh yeah, I always joke that because the reason I left New York and quit casting day to day, I have done a couple films, is because I had a daughter, and my husband and I had a daughter, and I wanted to, luckily enough, I could not work, and I wanted to be with her. Because casting is a very time-intensive job, especially TV. It's just nonstop. But I did say if ATWT had still been on the air, I would have stayed, because that was a perfect job, because it was such a machine that you actually would be home by 5 or 6. Like, you could leave the office and I would be able to go pick up my kid, you know, whereas casting prime time, it's your job ends and the show may get canceled, you know, so it's not consistent. And also you work late hours. So it was like, you know, I would have definitely stayed on. I used to joke with Roger Howarth, we would go, I'm going to ride this daytime train till it hits the wall, till it hits the side of the cave. Because, like, there is, and I was like, oh, yeah, like, because it's such a great job. I mean, you just loved everyone you worked with, and to do what you love and also have it be consistent and regular hours is a miracle.
And have that voice we talked about, too.
Right, exactly.
In a large part of it, you know, and the consistency and the hours and the, you know, and we were producers, you know, and, you know, I was in producer meetings all the time, you know.
Right.
It's unique. I feel bad they're not here. It's certainly, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to direct as well at the end.
I did. I was very fortunate that, you know, Ellen Wheeler, again, you know, who knew I was a theater director and kind of opened the door to say, you know, well, why don't you start learning and shadowing? So, you know, the last probably like the last 3 years, I probably shadowed like her mostly and some other directors, you know, for maybe about a year. And you know, we were out in P.
You came over to us.
I did. And then at the end, I actually, when Guiding Light went off the air, I was fortunate enough that a totally different style of directing. Over to As the World Turns, and
he actually asked me if I wanted to learn to direct. Chris said,
yeah,
he was
makes
so great.
sense.
He really wanted.
Yeah.
He brought in a couple people, and he was like, "Why don't you come in the booth, and why don't we?" And I was like, "Yeah."
What's the
difference?
I was like, I don't know, huh?
Well,
Rob,
Guiding Light at the end was more like shooting guerrilla independent film. You know, all the cameras were at the same time, and we just edited in post. Where As the World Turns, and like most daytime shows, is, you know, you're calling the shots in the studio live, which is a different beast.
That's right, because Guiding Light went digital that last.
Yeah, so we were running around, which was great. I loved
it. Film.
Yeah, you could make a lot of mistakes, and they could cover it, and there was sort of
that's the problem with the booth with the multi-camera is you can't cover. I mean, you can't gloss over it and edit. Yeah,
I think I'm credited with like 20 episodes of Guiding Light as a director. So it's like the last two doing both the jobs. And I directed a lot of like scenes in other people's, you know, wasn't the credited director. And I love that. That actually made me really happy. Plus then I got to take this relationship I had with these actors and then come to the set and kind of that theater directing mindset that I had. So that was really great. It was fun.
That's cool.
So my last question, because a fan had asked, but I know you're both too young, I would say. Neither of you got to meet or work with Betty Ray, did you? You know? I
know who Betty Ray is. Her daughter is a manager, right? I believe Dee Dee. So I
oh, wow.
Her, yeah. And, you know, I never met Betty Ray, but I certainly know of her. And I took it very seriously when I didn't follow her. There was a casting director between us, I believe, or maybe many. I don't even remember. But I did take it very seriously. She was Melanie Master, who was my first associate, who did work with her and told me lots of stories about her. And they even had their index cards still when I got there of the actor with their notes. So I took it very seriously that I was, you know, she was very loved and adored and respected. So it made me feel special when I sort of took that job.
Same here. She was a legend, and she also did As the World Turns for a long time. And what I found to be amazing was when the show went off the air, I had to close out the casting office, and we had all of her old paperwork. I mean, everything. And so going those last few weeks, we just went through all of her screen tests, all of her notes. It was awesome to see like what she wrote about Julianne Moore the first time she met her, and what she, you know, and just sort of seeing all that and seeing all the under fives. I mean, Stanley Tucci was an under five, so, you know.
God, all of that should be in a museum.
I know. Well, I hope that that's what they did with it. I hope that CBS like kept it I mean, I don't know, because I was like, I'm not taking this to the shredder. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah,
But
incredible.
I mean, I don't know where it all.
Fans would pay big bucks. Rob, one of our fans commented, you did 21 episodes of Guiding Light and 5 of World Turns.
I think that sounds right. World Turns was very generous to me because I was.
Thank you for answering that. It's amazing. I get, you know, when I don't know all the answers, they help me out. Guys, this was amazing.
So fun. Thanks for asking.
I hope you had fun.
Totally. Rob, it was so good seeing you.
Don't go anywhere. Stay here. Guys, I will, everybody have a great Labor Day weekend, and thanks for tuning in today. And Mary
thank you, anyone who tuned in.
Thank you, everyone, for having
Thank you,
us.
Alan. We'll stay here.
We definitely did.
We'll wait.
Okay.